Have you ever felt like joy has disappeared from your life without leaving a trace? As if something inside you had broken, and no matter how much you tried to smile, everything seemed like an empty effort? It's like your soul is screaming, but no one can hear it. You wake up, take a deep breath, try to continue, but something deep in your chest weighs like a rock. And the scariest thing? No one around him seems to notice. Maybe you're in exactly that moment right now, and that's why this message is for you. Jesus speaks to you today, right now, because he saw your pain before you even had the words to describe it. Most people never realize this, but today you will realize there is a way out of this sadness that has consumed your peace. There is a way back to joy that does not depend on circumstances. This truth has been ignored by many, but not anymore. Something that is about to be revealed here could completely change the way you have faced your emotional pain. And it's not empty advice. It's not a religious theory. It's a living voice. It's Jesus speaking to you. Imagine yourself in a dark place where everything seems silent and lonely, and suddenly, a faint light begins to appear on the horizon. It's not the end of the pain yet, but it's the certainty that the darkness won't last forever. Jesus is that light. He didn't just come to comfort you, he came to lift you out of the abyss. Take a deep breath now and feel this presence that you may not even be able to explain. This peace that begins to touch your chest is no coincidence. It's no coincidence that you came across this video. It's not luck, it's purpose. Jesus brought you here because he knows you need answers, and he will give it to you. But be careful, this is not a common message. It carries a powerful revelation, one that has been hidden for too long from tired hearts like yours. And today, finally, this truth will be revealed to you. A truth that has the power to change not just how you feel, but everything you experience. If this introduction has already spoken to your heart, then stay with me until the end. Because what's about to be said can transform the way you look at your pain. And more than that, it can make you experience real, deep, lasting joy, even in the midst of chaos. Jesus speaks to you, and he won't just ease your sadness. He will rewrite your story. Take a deep breath and open your heart to this message. Because what you will hear here is not just a word, it is a calling, a whisper from God that goes through your pain and reaches you now. Jesus speaks to you, and he chose exactly this moment, this video, this instant, to remind you that you are not alone, that he knows the silent places of your soul, those where no one enters but where he has always been. This is not just another message on the internet. It is an appointment between your heart and his voice. And if you're feeling something inside right now, this restlessness, this heat in your chest, this desire to cry without knowing exactly why, know it's him confirming that this word is for you. So, if something has already started to touch your heart, write it in the comments. I trust in Jesus. Your comment could be the spark of hope someone needs to find today. You have no idea how much your testimony can comfort another soul. And if this message is touching you, click the like button as an act of faith. This helps this word reach other lives who, like you, urgently need to hear Jesus speak. Like this video, so that this voice of comfort and liberation does not stop with you but continues to reach wounded hearts. You're not here by chance. Jesus brought you here for a reason, and there is something he is about to reveal. Something so profound that it will change the way you view your sadness. Stay with me. Jesus warned something very important about this situation, and you need to hear it before leaving this video. Get ready, because what comes now might be exactly what you've been waiting for a long time. Imagine being in a place so dark inside that even the sound of your own thoughts seems to echo hollowly. It is as if the soul is becoming silent, suffocated, and the only voice left is the silent scream of sadness. Elijah knew this place. He was a prophet, a man of God, someone who had seen fire fall from the sky, who had faced kings and crowds with courage. But even so, a day came when everything fell apart inside. Strength disappeared, hope evaporated, and he fled into the desert. He sat down under a tree and said, "That's enough, Lord. Take my life." That phrase, spoken in a desperate whisper, carries the weight that many feel today. And maybe you're feeling this right now. When the soul no longer wants to fight, when everything seems purposeless, when even faith seems distant. Elijah entered a cave, literally, a physical hiding place, but also an emotional one. The world outside continued to spin, but inside, there was silence. And God, did he remain silent too? What few understand is that sometimes God responds precisely in silence, not with thunder, nor with thunderous signals. In 1 Kings 19:12 it is written, "After the earthquake there came a fire, but the Lord was not in it. And after the fire came a gentle whispering." It was in this whisper that God spoke to Elijah, not to judge him, not to force him to get up, but to remind him that he was still there, gift, alive, loving. And maybe that's what your heart needs to hear right now. Not a lecture, not a scream, but a soft whisper that says, "I see you, I have not abandoned you, I understand your pain." How many times have you hidden in your own emotional cave? How many times was the pillow the only place where tears could fall without judgment? How many times have you smiled at the world, but inside the emptiness swallowed you? Elijah was a man like you and me, human, fragile, and yet God sought him, God entered his cave, and he does the same to you now. Jesus speaks to you, no matter how dark it is inside. He cuts through the darkness to find you, and when no one else can hear your silent scream, he listens, he whispers, he plays. It is important to understand, deep sadness is not a sign of spiritual weakness. Often, it is precisely when we are closest to the truth of who we are that these pains surface. Elijah did not fall because he was weak. He broke down because it was real, because it carried the weight of expectations, fears, invisible struggles, and God didn't rebuke him for it. On the contrary, he fed him, allowed him to rest, and then renewed him. It wasn't an instant change, it was a process. And that is what Jesus wants to start in you now, a process of restoration, of reunion with your soul. And if you ask yourself, but what if God isn't listening to me anymore? What if he's tired of me? The answer is right now. Because if he brought you to this message, it's because he never stopped calling you, even when you hid, even when he no longer prayed, even when he thought it wasn't worth it anymore. God's whisper passes through walls, caves, sorrows, and silence. This is why Jesus speaks to you now, because he didn't give up, because you are still loved, because there is something inside you that still pulses, even if very quietly. Maybe no one knows what you are facing. Maybe you can't even describe it, but Jesus knows. He saw every tear that no one saw. He felt the tightness in his chest that you couldn't explain, and now he calls you back, not for a perfect world, but for a fresh start with him. Because joy is not the absence of pain, it is the presence of Jesus even in the midst of pain. It's that whisper in the midst of the chaos that says, "You still have purpose, I still have plans for you, it's not over." If this word found you inside your own emotional cave, if something touched deep in your chest as you heard this, write in the comments, "Jesus reached me in the silence." This statement may be exactly what another soul needs to read today. Don't underestimate the power of your testimony. It can shine a light in the heart of someone who is in the same place you are right now. And if you are feeling like this message is an answer, let your heart speak. Tell us in the comments what you are experiencing. Maybe this is the beginning of a healing. And if this word is making sense to you, if the Holy Spirit is speaking to your soul right now, click the like button. But not like someone who just likes a video. Make it an act of faith, an act of trust. Because your click could be the instrument that takes this message to someone who is about to give up. in joy, so that this voice, the voice of Jesus, continues to echo beyond your cave. Sign up too, so that this place will always be a space of consolation, of living words, of spiritual direction for you, because Jesus speaks to you, and he will continue speaking. But that's not all. Something even deeper is about to be revealed, because there is a type of sadness that hides behind a smile. A pain so camouflaged that not even those closest to it can see it. And what's behind that pain can change the way you see everything. He was king, chosen by God, a man after the Lord's own heart. But there were days when David couldn't contain the pain that lived inside him, days when the weight of the world seemed to crush your soul, even surrounded by people, even dressed in glory, even leading crowds. Inside, he was bleeding. His Psalms do not hide this. He was not afraid to write what many are afraid to even think. Why are you cast down, O my soul? Why are you troubled within me? Psalm 42:11. These words were not written in a moment of weakness, but in truth. David was saying, with all the strength of his heart, I'm trying, I'm fighting, but inside me, there's something broken. Maybe you identify with this. Maybe you've also learned to smile on the outside while crying on the inside. Perhaps until today it has been like this, keeping up appearances, but fighting a silent battle, hiding tears with laughter, hiding anxieties with rehearsed phrases like, everything's fine, when in fact it's not. David knew what this was, and that's why his story is so relevant, because it shows that even the strongest, even the most spiritual, also collapse. And that's no shame. It's humanity. God is not scared by our tears. He does not back down from our pain. He approaches. David was not rejected because he was downcast. He was welcomed because God doesn't look for perfect people. He looks for sincere hearts. And when the pain becomes unbearable, when laughter can no longer disguise what is happening inside the soul, that is where Jesus comes in. Jesus speaks to you, and he doesn't come with judgments. It comes with presence, with comfort, with restoration. How many times have you woken up with a lump in your throat, put a smile on your face, and carried on with your day as if nothing was wrong? How many times have you been praised for your strength when all you wanted was to be able to say, I'm not okay? Maybe you are experiencing exactly this. And the most painful thing is feeling like no one notices, that everyone thinks you're fine, when inside you everything is in ruins. But there is a look that sees beyond the facade, a look that cuts through the forced smiles and sees the hurt heart. The look of Jesus. He saw David, and he sees you. He understands this hidden sadness. He knows what you hide, even from yourself. And more than that, he wants to heal this pain. The psalm continues, hope in God, for I will yet praise him. It's not an empty promise. It is a cry of hope in the midst of despair. David wasn't saying this because he already felt strong. He was saying it because he knew that even in the pain, the Lord was still the answer. Sadness can be deep, it can be persistent, it can even be disguised, but it is never greater than the love of Jesus. And when you choose to open your heart, when you stop pretending to be strong and allow yourself to be fragile before him, something supernatural happens. The presence of God enters the space of pain, and where there was weight, lightness enters. Where there was despair, hope enters. Where there were hidden tears, a new shine is born in the eyes. David was healed, not because he ignored his pain, but because he took it before the Lord. And you can do it now too. You don't have to pretend anymore. You no longer need to carry this weight alone. Jesus speaks to you, and he's saying, I know what's hurting inside. I know what you don't have. The courage to tell anyone. And yet, I keep loving you, I keep choosing you, I keep calling you. Camouflaged sadness needs to be exposed to the light of grace. Not to shame you, but to set you free. Not to condemn you, but to restore you. What you are feeling right now is not weakness. It is the Holy Spirit touching where you need to be healed. And he does it with love, carefully, with patience. If this message spoke directly to your soul, if you felt like you were in David's words, write in the comments, "Jesus sees me inside." This phrase, simple but powerful, can become a healing bridge for other people who also live smiling on the outside and crying on the inside. Leave your comment as an act of courage and truth. You can't imagine how many lives can be reached by your sincerity. Your testimony could be the answer that another heart is waiting for. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. There is an even quieter sadness than that, a pain that is born when you no longer know who you are, when you look in the mirror and no longer recognize your own identity. And what Jesus has to say about it will change the way you see yourself. He felt such an emptiness that he no longer knew who he was. The prodigal son, that young man in the parable told by Jesus in Luke 15, represents more than just a rebel or someone who walked away. It symbolizes all the hearts that at some point lost their identity in the midst of pain, guilt, or loneliness. It all started with a desire for freedom, for independence. He wanted to live his own life, away from the rules of his father's house. And for a while, everything seemed to be fine. But the distance from presence, love, security took a heavy toll. Riches are gone, friends disappeared, and he found himself in a place where not even the most basic food was guaranteed. A place where, when he looked at himself, he no longer saw his son, just a failure, a stranger. How often does emotional pain arise from this, of not knowing who you are anymore? Looking in the mirror and seeing a tired, dull face, disconnected from its essence. The spiritual and emotional identity crisis can be so intense that it paralyzes. And it all starts with small choices, small escapes, small concessions. When we realize it, we are already far from who we were, lost, like the prodigal son, who, at the height of despair, came to his senses. This phrase is powerful. Coming to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's servants have food to spare, and I am here dying of hunger?" Luke 15:17. It was there, at rock bottom, that he began to remember that he was a son, that there was still a house, that there was still a father. The memory of love rescued him from confusion, and that's what Jesus wants to do with you now. Jesus speaks to you, and he is saying, "You may have forgotten who you are, but I never have. You are still mine." The deepest sadness often arises when we lose connection with our spiritual identity. When we think that mistakes define who we are, that pain shapes our value, that separation made us unworthy. But none of that is true. The identity that God gave you remains intact. Even if it is dusty, even if it is stuffy, you are still a son. You are still a daughter. And that's why Jesus is calling you back, not to expose you, not to charge you, but to remind you who you are. And when you start to remember who you are, something inside you changes. Sadness loses strength, the shame begins to sink in, and the heart, which was confused, begins to find the path of joy again. This reunion, however, is not easy, because there is an internal voice that insists that you don't deserve to come back, that has already gone too far, that there is no more space for you. But that voice lies. Because when the prodigal son returned, even with his ready speech of guilt and unworthiness, the father saw him from afar and ran to meet him. He didn't wait for explanations. He did not ask for justifications, just hugged. He cried, restored, and he had a party. This is what God wants to do with you now. He wants to run to meet you. He wants to dress you with dignity again, put a ring on your finger and sandals on your feet. He wants to remind you that you are not a mistake. You are loved. You belong. You are part of the house. Jesus speaks to you. And perhaps this moment is now your coming to your senses. Perhaps when you hear this word, you are realizing how far you have strayed from your essence, how much pain, fear, trauma took you away from the love that always supported you. But distance does not change God's love. She just gives you the chance to miss her, and the longing for God's presence is the beginning of healing. Because where there is longing, there is memory. And where there is memory, there is the possibility of return. And the return is always possible. Even if you think you no longer have strength, that you don't deserve it, that you don't know where to start, the Father is waiting for you, with open arms, with attentive eyes, with a heart full of grace. If this word awakened something inside you, if at some point you saw yourself in this son who lost himself, write in the comments, "Jesus reminded me of who I am." This phrase could be the beginning of a reunion. It could be the anchor that will hold another heart that is also lost. Share in the comments what this message generated in you. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. You can be the healing channel someone needs. And when you write, you declare faith, you activate movement, you give space for the restoration to begin. But that's still not all. There is an even more silent pain, a sensation that hurts deeply, that of feeling that God has forgotten you, that in the midst of his battle he simply turned away. And what happens when even the sky seems silent will surprise you. He was fair, integrity, a man who feared God and shunned evil. This was the description of Job, one of the most intriguing characters in the Bible. But even with all these qualities, he was plunged into a darkness so thick that he felt as if God himself had disappeared. Everything Job feared most happened. He lost his children, his possessions, his health, and perhaps most devastatingly, he lost the sense of God's presence. In Job 23:8-9, he says, "I go to the east, but he is not there, to the west, and I do not find him. When he is in action in the north, I do not see him. When he turns to the south, I cannot see him." The anguish in these words is real, raw, devastating. Job wasn't just suffering physically, he was emotionally drained, spiritually frustrated. It was as if the sky had fallen silent, as if God had walked away right when he needed him most. Maybe you are in that place too, praying and not hearing an answer, waiting for a sign, a relief, a divine touch. But all he finds is silence. And God's silence hurts more than any harsh word, because it seems to confirm our worst fears. Has he abandoned me? Is he punishing me? Did he get tired of me? And in these questions, the soul bows, the heart becomes silent, and discouragement begins to take over. But there is something that needs to be said now. God's silence is never absence. God's silence is preparation, it's polishing, it's careful. Jesus speaks to you even when you seem silent. He is not indifferent to your pain. He's closer than you think. And sometimes he is right in the place where your faith is being tested, not to destroy you, but to reveal to you the strength you didn't know you had. Job never knew the reason for his pain while he was experiencing it. He had no access to what was happening in heaven. "I didn't know that I was being observed, tested, considered by God himself as an example of faith." And this teaches us something powerful. Not all pain has an immediate explanation, and that's okay. Sometimes what God is doing is bigger than we can comprehend right now. Sometimes the process is more important than the answer. Job cried out, cried, rebelled, but he didn't give up. He remained. Even without understanding, even without feeling, he chose to trust. And that's what turns pain into revelation. Because in the end, God manifested himself, and he didn't just restore Job, he met him in the midst of his pain. And the presence of God is worth more than any explanation. Jesus speaks to you, even when you think he is far away, even when the sky seems closed, even when prayers return in the form of silence. This silence is echoing something deeper than words. It is generating resistance, maturity, intimacy. God is not punishing you, he is shaping you, and he only shapes those he loves. He only invests time in those who have value. You are not being ignored, you are being prepared. Prepared for something you can't see yet, but that will make this whole process worth it. The sadness that arises from God's apparent abandonment is, in fact, an invitation to deeper faith. A faith that does not depend on sensations, but on trust. A faith that you don't need to understand to continue believing. Maybe everything inside you is telling you to give up. Perhaps you have already thought that God has forgotten you, but if that was so, why would you be hearing this message now? Why, even in silence, something still pulses inside, because he never left your side. Job thought God was far away, but the truth is that he was there the whole time, working behind the scenes, supporting his soul when no explanation made sense. And now he is here too, talking to you, whispering through your pain, "I'm here. I never left." If this word found you in that place of silence, if you have ever felt like Job, lost in pain without understanding where God was, write in the comments, "Even in the silence, I trust in you." This statement has power. It breaks the cycle of fear. It activates faith where there was only uncertainty, and it could be exactly the boost someone else needs to keep going. Don't keep it to yourself. Share your pain, your faith, your new beginning. Because when you do, you join a silent crowd of hearts that are also waiting to hear from God. And together you will realize he never shut up. He was just saying it differently. But wait, what happens next could change the way you understand everything. Because there is a pain that not only silences the soul, but steals the meaning of life. And what the Word of God reveals about this is something that will spark hope where everything seemed lost. Solomon had everything: unparalleled wisdom, countless riches, worldwide recognition, political power, and yet, in his most intimate and sincere words, he declared, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Ecclesiastes 1:2. This is not just a poetic or philosophical phrase. It is a cry from someone who, despite being surrounded by everything the world says matters, felt that nothing made sense. This statement does not come from a man who failed. It comes from someone who achieved everything he wanted and discovered that without God, none of it truly fulfills. Solomon experienced all the pleasures, immersed himself in the greatest achievements, became involved with the greatest riches, and in the end, he found only an emptiness that echoed within him, an abyss of meaning. And maybe that's exactly the feeling you carry, doing everything right, achieving what was supposed to be happiness, but still feeling like something is missing. There is a sadness that does not come from loss, but from the absence of meaning. A silent anguish that sets in when you look around and think, was that it? Was that it? This type of sadness is more common than you might think, especially among those who apparently have everything. Because no matter how much you have on the outside, when the spirit is disconnected from the source, from Jesus, the heart remains hungry. Solomon sought the meaning of life everywhere, and the more he sought away from God, the emptier he felt. His journey is a reflection of the journey of many, and maybe yours. Maybe you've tried to fill this void with distractions, achievements, people, status, but the hole seems bottomless. True joy seems far away, and the soul is tired. But here's the revelation that changes everything. True joy doesn't come from what's outside. It is born from what is within, and only Jesus can plant this joy, because he doesn't give something temporary. He gives a presence that remains. Jesus speaks to you, and he is saying, everything you have sought until now, trying to find meaning, is a shadow of what I want to give you. His presence is not a reward for the religious. It is a gift for the weary, for the broken, for those who tried and were frustrated, for those who reached the top and still feel at the bottom. Jesus is the meaning. He is why. He is the answer to the emptiness that you don't even know how to explain. Solomon concludes in Ecclesiastes that after all, the most important thing is to fear God and keep his commandments, not as an obligation, but as a reunion, Because only when we reconnect with the Creator can we understand creation. Only when we surrender to Jesus can we understand who we are, and the meaning returns. The heart breathes. The soul rests. Not because everything around us changes, but because a certainty is born within us, that we are not alone, and that, even when nothing makes sense, Jesus is the meaning. If this word has echoed in your heart, if you have felt this emptiness, that seems to have no explanation, write in the comments, "Jesus is my meaning." This simple statement can be the beginning of a profound transformation. It could be the spark that rekindles the light in the heart of someone who has also been living on automatic. Share this truth. You can't imagine how many lives can be touched by a sincere and faith-filled comment. Don't just keep it to yourself. Sow hope, plant words that heal, and if this message touched your soul deeply, click the like button. Make it a spiritual act, because when you click like, you are helping this message reach other people who are also trying to understand the reason for the pain, the emptiness, the lack of meaning. Your click could be God's answer to someone. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now is the time. Sign up to continue receiving messages that feed your faith, strengthen your soul, and reignite your hope. Jesus speaks to you, and he will continue speaking. But that's not all. There is an even more subtle pain. The pain of those who do everything, give themselves completely, always try to get it right, but still feel useless. And what Jesus has to say about it can restore what you thought was lost within you. Had already walked with Jesus. I had seen miracles up close. He had been called to walk on water. He had been chosen, looked into the eyes, loved by the Son of God himself. But even so, Pedro failed. At the most critical moment, at the moment when Jesus was being taken to be judged, Peter denied knowing him. Not once, but 3 times. And it wasn't just fear, it was an emotional breakdown. He who had promised to be with Jesus until the end crumbled under the pressure. And when the rooster crowed, as Jesus had predicted, Peter realized what he had done. He came to his senses, and what came next was a deafening silence within the soul. A deep, paralyzing sadness that screams inside the heart of those who feel they have failed God. Maybe you know this feeling well, of giving yourself completely, of trying to do the right thing, of serving, loving, believing, and still feeling like you failed. That wasn't enough, that your delivery did not generate the expected result. Pedro walked away. Shame drove him away. Guilt isolated him. And for a while, he probably believed it was all over there, that his mission had been aborted by his failure. But Jesus, oh Jesus, Jesus did not discard him. After the resurrection, Jesus went to Peter, not to charge, not to embarrass, but to restore. And this is where everything changes. In John 21:17, after asking 3 times, "Do you love me?" Jesus responds to Peter, "Feed my sheep." It's as if he said, "I know what you did, but I still trust you. I still have plans for you. I still see value in you." Jesus speaks to you. And if you're feeling worthless, even though you've done everything, he's now saying, "I'm still counting on you." This is one of the greatest emotional and spiritual pains, feeling disposable, the feeling that all the effort was in vain, that the sleepless nights, the prayers, the right words, the steps of faith were not enough. And it's a silent pain, because it often comes just after doing everything right. But Peter's mistake didn't disqualify him, it prepared him, because God's grace does not depend on our perfection. It depends on our disposition. Jesus knew that Peter would fail, and you still chose him. This means that your failure is no surprise to God. He already knew, and he still called you. It still empowered you. Still, he entrusted you with a mission. The error did not cancel the call. He just revealed that the strength is not in you. It is in him. If you have been feeling useless, undervalued, as if everything you do has no impact, listen to this. Your identity is not in your successes or mistakes. It lies in the fact that you are loved by Jesus. And he doesn't just love you. He trusts you. The same Jesus who looked into Peter's eyes after his denial is the one who now looks into his heart. He does not ignore your pain. He recognizes your effort. And he's saying, "Do you love me? So keep going, because there are still people who need what only you can deliver." The sadness of feeling purposeless dissolves when you understand that you are still part of God's plans, that you have not been forgotten, that there is something about you that heaven deeply values. If this word spoke to you, if at any point you ever felt like you failed so much that you no longer deserve to continue, write in the comments, "Jesus still trusts me." This phrase has the power to break emotional chains. It can be the beginning of restoration for anyone who has ever thought about giving up. Your comment could be like that look Jesus gave Peter, a gesture that changes everything. Don't hesitate. Open your soul, witness your faith, even if it is shaking, because it is precisely in this weakness that God's power is perfected. But what happens next will touch even deeper, because there are times when the sky is silent, and this silence is not absence, it is preparation for the miracle that comes later. And the story that's about to be told may completely change the way you view times when it seems like God isn't listening. She loved him. She believed. She waited. Martha knew who Jesus was. "I had already welcomed him into your home. I had already seen his miracles. I had already felt his presence. But now his brother was dead, and Jesus had delayed." She sent word, she cried out, she waited, but he didn't arrive in time. John 11:6 tells us something that seems impossible to accept in the midst of pain. When he heard that Lazarus was sick, he remained where he was for 2 days. Like this, the friend is sick, the family is desperate, and Jesus decides to wait. This is the kind of silence that hurts deeply, the kind of waiting that makes us wonder, did he really hear me? Does he care? Martha's pain was the same as that of many who today feel that God is not in a hurry, that he is taking too long. He saw the situation, knows the urgency, but he doesn't come. This is the anguish of those who love God, have faith, but are facing silence, because faith does not exclude pain. Faith does not prevent mourning, nor does it cancel the time of waiting. Martha knew who Jesus was, but that didn't stop her from crying. And Jesus, he didn't just know what he would do. He felt it, he cried, he was moved. That says a lot. It says that even when he chooses to wait, he continues to feel our pain. Jesus' silence is not contempt. It's part of something bigger that we can't yet see. Jesus speaks to you, and even though it may seem like he is silent now, that doesn't mean he is absent. He keeps listening. He continues to care. What's more, he is preparing something that doesn't fit our expectations, but completely exceeds what we asked for. When Jesus finally arrives and finds Martha, she says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." This phrase carries pain, frustration, perhaps even a touch of accusation. But it also carries faith, because even in the midst of loss, Martha still calls Jesus Lord. He still recognizes who he is, and Jesus responds to this faith not with explanations, but with resurrection. He calls Lazarus out of the tomb, and there, in that moment when everything seemed lost, the glory of God manifests itself. There is something we need to understand. God's silence is not the end of the story. Sometimes it's just preparation for the biggest miracle of your life. When it seems like everything has died, the dream, the hope, the motivation, Jesus arrives and proves that he is still the resurrection and the life. If you are in a time of waiting, in a time of silence, where nothing seems to move and the sky seems closed, no, God has not forgotten you. He's on his way. And when he arrives, it will be in a way you never imagined. He is not late. He arrives at the perfect time for his glory to be seen. And while you wait, he sustains you. As you cry, he watches you with compassion, and at the right time he will surprise you. Because Jesus' silence is not an empty response. It is an invitation to trust. It is a declaration of love that says, "Trust me, Even when you don't see me, I am here and I will act. If this word touched your soul, if you are in a moment where you feel that Jesus is taking time, write in the comments, "Even though I wait, I trust in you." This simple phrase can open spiritual doors. It can give strength to those who are also tired of waiting. Testify with courage. Don't hide your pain. Turn it into a meeting point with other wounded hearts. Your comment could be God's embrace of someone who is about to give up believing. But that's not all, because there is a sadness that doesn't wait for the end of the day. It arrives with the sunrise. A sadness that visits you first thing in the morning, as if the new day didn't bring hope. And what God reveals about this can completely change the way you start your days. Some people wake up hoping that the new day will bring relief, but all they feel is an unexplainable sadness, a discouragement that arrives even before the sun rises. Waking up becomes a heavy task. Before you even get out of bed, your chest is already tight, your mind is already screaming, and your heart is whispering softly, "One more day." To hold on, there is no apparent tragedy, there is no clear reason, but there is a tiredness in the soul, as if each morning were a battle to find some meaning. This silent pain, which settles into routine, is often ignored. But God does not ignore it, and He left recorded in the Scriptures an answer that can change everything. The mercies of the Lord are new every morning. Lamentations 3:23. The person who wrote this was Jeremiah, known as the weeping prophet, a man who knew what it was like to start the day crying. He saw his city in ruins, his people in pain, his dreams shattered. And yet, in the midst of the destruction, he declared, "Still, I hope." This is the difference between those who know Jesus. Sadness may come with the dawn of the day, but hope comes with His presence. Jeremiah did not ignore his pain. He wrote about her. He cried, he lamented, but most of all he remembered God is faithful. His mercies do not fail. They are not generic, they are personal, new every morning. This means that it doesn't matter how you went to sleep. What God has prepared for this day is new, and it is available. Jesus speaks to you now. He's saying, "I saw how you woke up. I felt the weight you carry, and I renewed my mercy upon you today." And that changes everything, because it's not about what you feel, it's about what He promised. Maybe you're living in days where getting out of bed requires strength that you no longer have. Maybe the alarm clock rings, but your soul remains asleep, paralyzed by pain, by anxiety, by a routine that no longer makes sense. But there is something that needs to be declared. This is not the end. The day may have started cloudy inside, but God's mercy has already arrived before the sun. She arrived before your first tear, before your first negative thought, even before your prayer. Because God's love does not depend on your spiritual performance. He is constant, unchanging, renewing. He doesn't wait for you to feel good to act. It works to make you feel alive again. Jeremiah shows us that we can be honest with God. We can say today is difficult. We can recognize I woke up without strength, and yet declare, "Still I trust." This is true faith. It's not denying the pain. It's walking with her, knowing that we are not alone. Jesus understands the silent mornings. He knows the eyes that wake up swollen. He sees the effort of simply carrying on, and He honors every step taken towards Him, even if it's a slow step, because He is the God who renews, that regenerates, which restores. And when sadness tries to convince you that today will be the same as yesterday, listen to this. His mercy has already changed everything, even if you don't see it yet. Even if you don't feel it yet, believe me, it has already started. If this word spoke to you, if you know what it's like to wake up with sadness, write in the comments, "Today I receive God's mercies." This declaration is a step of faith, and it might be exactly what another heart needs to read early on. You could be the answer to someone who is also struggling to get up. Leave your comment as an act of spiritual courage. Show that there is still hope even in the midst of the morning blues. God can use your vulnerability to heal another life, but that's not all. There is an even deeper pain, the one that comes when you lose something you prayed for a long time, when what you wanted most, what seemed like a promise, simply slips out of your hands. And the revelation behind this pain will show you that your tears were not in vain. She prayed every day, with tears, with fasting, with supplication. Anna was not a woman who simply wanted something common. She carried in her heart the weight of a deep cry, a legitimate dream, a sincere request to be a mother. Time passed, other women became pregnant, hope seemed to fade, and God's silence hurt. Even more so because her pain was the target of mockery. Peninnah, Elkanah's other wife, made a point of reminding her of her barrenness. Anna not only felt the pain of waiting, she was humiliated in the midst of this weight, and yet she continued to go to the temple. He continued crying before the Lord. Until, in 1 Samuel 1:10, the Bible describes in depth, she cried a lot and prayed to the Lord. These few words reveal a universe of pain and perseverance. Anna didn't stop praying, even when everything around her screamed giving up. Maybe you are experiencing something similar. You prayed, you waited, you believed, and yet what you wanted most was gone. It ended, escaped, it broke. Maybe you missed something you prayed for months, years. Maybe you saw a dream die. And now, in addition to the pain of absence, there is a feeling of confusion. Why? If I prayed so much, why didn't God answer me? This is one of the hardest pains, losing what you asked for in faith. The soul bleeds, faith rocks, and the heart often comes into conflict with the sky. But this is where Jesus speaks to you. He whispers, I saw every tear, I heard every prayer, and nothing was in vain. Because what you plant in prayer, even between tears, flourishes in the time of promise. What Anna didn't know, as she cried in the temple, was that God was already writing a whole new chapter in her story. His crying was not ignored. Your tears were seeds, and what she thought was the end was just the beginning. Samuel was born from a womb marked by waiting. It was a response. It was a testimony. It was a miracle. But more than that, Samuel was a prophet, a watershed, someone who anointed kings. God didn't just answer Hannah's desire, he did far beyond what she imagined. This reveals a powerful spiritual truth. What you lose today, no matter how painful, it could be the soil in which God will plant something eternal. It's not about losing. It's about what he's building from this. God takes no pleasure in your pain, but he doesn't waste any tears. Every prayer you said, every sleepless night, every word whispered between sobs, all of it is before him. Jesus speaks to you and he's saying, it's not over, I still have plans, I still have purpose. Maybe you cried like Anna, with a bitter soul, almost without the strength to continue. But just like her, you too can leave this place transformed, because God didn't respond with just one son. He responded with destiny, with legacy, with prophecy, with a fresh start. Your story is still being written, and what seemed like a loss could be the fertile ground for your greatest testimony. If this message found you in a moment of loss, if you have prayed with all your soul and still seen something slip from your hands, write in the comments, I believe that God turns tears into testimonies. This declaration is not just faith, it is spiritual positioning, and it may be what another heart needs to read to continue, testify, share. Use your pain as a bridge to comfort someone, because that's exactly what God does. He transforms what broke us into something that builds others. Your comment can be, balm for an afflicted soul, and your outburst could be the answer someone was begging to receive, but that's not all. Because there is a type of pain that goes beyond loss. It is deep tiredness, that emotional exhaustion that makes the soul want to stop. And what Jesus revealed about this weakness will show you that your strength does not need to come from you. It is now available, and it has a name, grace. He carried a mission, a burning passion, an unshakable faith. Paulo was tireless, determined, a man who faced prisons, floggings, shipwrecks, but there was something inside him that hurt him in a more silent, more intimate, more constant way. The Bible doesn't reveal exactly what it was, but in 2 Corinthians 12:9, he talks about a thorn in the flesh, something that made him cry out to God for relief. 3 times he asked for it to be removed. 3 times he waited for liberation. But the response he received was unexpected and at the same time revolutionary. God said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." It's as if heaven itself said, "You don't need to be strong all the time, you just need to trust that I will be strong for you." This is one of the hardest pains to explain. Tiredness that doesn't go away, the emotional burden that never seems to ease, the constant effort of trying to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. Maybe you understand this very well. Maybe you're exactly at this point right now, tired of trying to be strong, tired of keeping everything standing, tired of smiling on the outside while inside everything falls apart. And the most painful thing is that the more you try, the more it feels like you are failing. It's as if your strength is drained with each new day. But Jesus speaks to you, and he says, with the same voice that he spoke to Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you." It is not your strength that will sustain you, it's his. It's not how much you can handle, that's how much he holds you. What the Apostle Paul discovered completely changes the way we deal with suffering, because he understood that the pain that did not go away was not a sign of spiritual weakness, but of divine purpose. God was molding Paul, teaching him to depend on grace, not his own ability. And that's exactly what God wants to show you today. You may be tired, exhausted, thinking you have reached your limit. But it is at this exact point that God's grace manifests itself most intensely. Grace is not just unmerited favor. She is strength. She is sustenance. She is the invisible hug that keeps you standing when you can no longer take a step alone. Grace is Jesus living in you, even when everything seems to fall apart. Maybe you think you failed because you couldn't keep everything under control. But God never asked you to be the hero of his story. He just asked you to trust, to rest in him, to let his strength be made perfect in your weakness. There is a deep beauty in surrendering, in recognizing that you need help, that can no longer work alone. And when you do that, when you stop fighting with your own weapons and surrender to the presence of Jesus, something happens. The weight becomes lighter, the soul finds rest, and the sadness, which used to consume you, begins to give way to a peace that makes no human sense, but is totally real. You are not alone in this exhaustion. God sees your effort, recognizes your pain, and is ready to carry you. He is not waiting for you to get stronger and then act. He wants to act now, exactly where you are, exactly as you are. Because grace does not require strength. She demands delivery. And this surrender can be the beginning of your healing. The presence of God does not eliminate all thorns, but it transforms the way you carry them. They stop being signs of weakness and become marks of powerful grace. If this message spoke directly to you, if you have felt that you no longer have the strength to continue, write in the comments, "Lord, your grace is sufficient for me." This simple sentence can become the most powerful statement of your life. It could be the cry of surrender that transforms tiredness into rest. Write sincerely. You are not alone. And your transparency can heal others who are on the verge of giving up. Share your faith, even if shaky. Jesus speaks to you, and he wants to speak to others through your testimony. But that's not all, because there is a pain that silences even words, that silences even prayers. A pain so internal that it seems impossible to explain. And what Jesus did at that moment will prove to you that even the silence of your soul has value before God. Lost in the darkest night of the soul, even surrounded by people, Jesus experienced something that many of us feel but can rarely explain. He was in Gethsemane a few hours before he was handed over, and even with the disciples so close, he was alone, not physically but emotionally, spiritually. "My soul is deeply grieved, even to the point of death," he said in Matthew 26:38. Stop and think about this. The very Son of God, who healed multitudes, who calmed storms with a word, was in such a devastating moment that his words were pure despair. He cried, he sweated blood, he felt the weight of the world and the absence of understanding around him. This is the kind of pain that no one understands, that consumes you inside while the world spins like nothing is happening. And maybe you recognize yourself in that. Maybe you are right there in your own Gethsemane, where your pains are real but invisible, where your thoughts become heavier than your body can carry, where people surround you but no one really reaches you. And it is in this dark place that Jesus speaks to you. He doesn't watch you from afar. He doesn't judge your sadness. He's already been in it. He felt what you feel. He knows what it's like to ask for support and be left waiting. He understands prayer that comes with tears and not with words. He recognizes the silent pain because he has already screamed in silence. And that changes everything, because when no one else understands you, Jesus understands. When you think you are going crazy from feeling too much, he embraces you in the chaos. When you think your faith has abandoned you because you can't sing praise or pray with strength, it just stays, gift, close, alive. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify yourself. You just need to know he feels with you. And in that feeling, he transforms, not with ready-made phrases or cheap promises, but with presence, with love that doesn't require performance, with a compassion that goes through any wall you have built to protect yourself. And there is a hidden truth in this moment of Jesus in Gethsemane that can free your mind today. When he said, "My soul is deeply grieved," he was not rejected by the Father. He was not abandoned because of his pain. On the contrary, it was there in that extreme vulnerability that he aligned himself with the eternal purpose. Sometimes you think your pain takes you away from God, but what if it's just the opposite? What if it is at the deepest point of your anguish that you are closest to heaven's revelation about your life? Jesus does not push you away because of your suffering. He approaches, he enters the garden with you. He watches when everyone sleeps. He cries with you, and he remains. You may be experiencing pain that no one can understand. It may be begging for an answer, a word, a sign. But maybe all you need right now isn't an explanation. Be presence. And his presence is already there, even if you don't feel it, even if you don't realize it. Gethsemane was not the end of Jesus. It was the beginning of humanity's greatest victory. And what you are facing today, however overwhelming it may seem, could be exactly the turning point that will transform your entire life. The pain may not go away now, but the loneliness is over, because Jesus speaks to you. And when he speaks, even the loneliest pain finds meaning. If you are experiencing something that no one understands, but this message spoke directly to your heart, write in the comments, "Jesus understands me." This statement can break invisible chains. It can open the way to healing, solace, and restoration. And more than that, it could be what someone in complete silence needs to read to continue. Don't underestimate the power of sharing your pain with Jesus. He is with you in the garden of trouble, but he is also preparing the resurrection to come. Your comment could be the spark of faith that ignites another life. But what happens next will change the way you view loneliness, because there is a kind of abandonment that seems final, and yet it is in that abandonment that heaven reveals its most powerful strength. Paul was alone, literally, isolated in a cold cell in Rome, surrounded by stones and darkness. But what hurt most was not the prison, but the abandonment. Friends, mission companions, brothers in faith, everyone had left and he was left there. There were no crowds to hear his sermons. There were no letters being written at that time. There was no glory, pulpit, or singing. Just silence. The kind of silence that screams inside and crushes outside. It is in this context that he writes to Timothy, "But the Lord stood by me and gave me strength." 2 Timothy 4:17. And this phrase, which seems simple, carries a power that goes beyond centuries, because it doesn't come from someone who is well. It comes from someone who is completely alone, but still supported. Have you ever felt this loneliness? Not the one in the empty room, but the one that happens when your heart is surrounded by people, but no one is really with you. When you talk, but no one really listens. When you need it, but no one shows up. When you scream in prayer, and all you hear is an echo. This invisible loneliness, this suffocating emptiness, this pain that seems to have no witness, this is where many give up. But it is also at this point that Jesus speaks to you, and what he says is not a sermon, it is a presence. He doesn't try to justify why the others are gone. He does not explain why he abandoned it. He just stays. The Lord was on Paul's side, and he is by your side now. There are moments in life when you will feel like Paulo, abandoned even by those who promised to be with you. People you helped, prayed for, shared dreams and pain with, they suddenly disappear. That hurts, and it hurts deep. But there is something that never changes. Jesus will not leave you alone. And it's not a cliché. It is a spiritual reality more concrete than any wall of that emotional cell where you may be. While everyone moves away, he approaches. When you think no one sees you, he watches you with tenderness. When you don't know how to continue, he gives you strength. Paulo did not ask for a magical way out. He asked for presence, and that's what he received. Often the answer we seek from God is not a miracle, but a hand on the shoulder saying, "I am here." And that changes everything. Because when you know you are not alone, even prison turns into an altar. Even pain becomes a seed of faith. Even despair is filled with hope. Loneliness does not need to consume you. It can be the environment where you hear Jesus most clearly. Because when everything is silent, his whisper becomes audible. Maybe your life is like this now, surrounded by emotional walls. Maybe you don't feel seen by anyone, but you need to know you are seen by the one who never blinks. You are loved by the one who never abandons, and he is here at this exact moment, touching your heart with these words. This is no coincidence, that's an answer. It is Jesus saying, even if everyone leaves you, I am by your side and give you strength. Don't wait for human validation to continue. If heaven is with you, no one can stop you from proceeding. If this word spoke to your heart, write in the comments, Jesus is with me. Declare it out loud as Paul did, not for others to hear, but for your own soul to believe. Your comment could be the refuge someone needs to find today. It could be the confirmation a lonely soul silently sought. Let God use your statement to strengthen lives you can't even imagine. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because sometimes what you hide with smiles and pretty words, you urgently need to be touched by the light of Jesus. Naaman was an admired man, a great commander of the Syrian army, surrounded by honor, victories, and respect. He carried an imposing public image, strong, fearless, confident. But there was something he was hiding, something that no one saw in the ceremonies, in the speeches, in the public smiles. He was a leper. The text of 2 Kings 5:1 ends with a soul-wrenching phrase, but he was a leper. How much pain is there in this pause, in this but? Naaman had everything to appear invincible, but behind the armor there were wounds that not even he knew how to heal. And how many of us are exactly like this? We smile in stories, but we cry into our pillows. We showed strength at work, but we collapsed in the dark of the room. We publish moments of victory, while inside we live silent wars. There is a pain that doesn't scream. It just weighs. You get up every day, do what needs to be done, respond, everything is fine, out of instinct, but it's not. You survive automatically because the alternative is to face the emotional leprosy that no one can see. And when no one sees, you start to believe that not even God sees. But the truth is that Jesus speaks to you in that very place where your soul hurts. He is not impressed by masks. He does not turn away from hidden wounds. He approaches, he plays, he heals. Naaman almost lost his healing because he resisted the simplicity of the miracle. He expected something grand, theatrical, worthy of his position. But the instructions were clear. Dip 7 times in the Jordan, an ordinary river, modest, in appearance but full of promise. And here's the point that can change everything. Sometimes what heals you isn't what impresses, it's what obeys. God doesn't want your effort to keep up appearances. He wants his delivery, your truth, your emotional leprosy, your broken heart. Your thoughts are confused, your internal crises. It's when you immerse yourself in him without reservations, without masks, without shame, that true healing begins. Have you ever wondered why it hurts so much to live like this? Maybe it's because you carry the weight of keeping everything intact on the outside, while inside everything is falling apart. But there is a soft, insistent call echoing in your spirit now. Son, daughter, you don't need to hide it anymore. Naaman needed courage to take off his armor. And you? Are you ready to take away what protects you, but also imprisons you? Hidden leprosy will never be cured as long as you continue to pretend it doesn't exist. God only transforms what is delivered. There is nothing in you that scares the grace of God. No pain, sin, memory, trauma, or failure is greater than the restorative power of Jesus. He knows your leprosy, and yet he decided to love you. Still, it calls you. Yet here you are now saying, "Come, dive into me, 7 times, 70 times 7. As many times as necessary, I'll be here." If this word spoke deeply to you, write in the comments, "I'm ready to dive in." Declare this as a step of faith. Your confession can free other lives that are also hidden behind armor. Your comment could be the courage someone needs to take off their mask. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. Because there is a cure that not only cleans the wound, but returns the shine to the eyes. Get ready. What comes next may restore areas of your heart that you thought were lost forever. Imagine Moses, the one who spoke to God face to face, the one who led the people through the desert, the one who parted the Red Sea with the staff in his hands, now prostrate, exhausted, broken inside. The crowd he led murmured, complained, demanded. The people never seemed to be satisfied. It was pressure after pressure, charge after charge, and no recognition. In Numbers 11:15, Moses reaches his breaking point and cries out, "Kill me at once if you love me." This phrase, spoken by one of the greatest leaders in biblical history, is like a muffled cry from someone who is trying to keep everything standing on the outside, but has already collapsed on the inside. Maybe you know this place well, where people say you're strong, but inside you're screaming, "I can't take it anymore." You smile so as not to worry others, carry weights that no one sees, solve problems that no one recognizes, and yet you feel like you need to maintain an image of balance. But Jesus speaks to you today, not to your facade, but to your soul, to your tired heart, to your emotional exhaustion, because he sees what no one sees, and he doesn't require you to keep playing strong. There is a brutal difference between being strong with God and trying to be strong without him. Moses tried to bear everything alone until he could no longer stand it. How many times have you done the same? How many nights have you pretended to be fine so as not to worry your loved? And how many times have you swallowed your tears because it wasn't time to weaken? But the gospel does not require human strength. It demands surrender. It's not about resisting until you break. It's about surrendering before then. Moses thought he needed to carry everything, but God had raised up 70 elders to help him, and he didn't even know it. There is help from God for your tiredness. There is refreshment for your soul. There is relief where today there is only pain. Have you ever allowed yourself to be fragile before God? Have you ever cried until you're empty? Have you ever confessed that you can no longer try to be everything to everyone? Jesus is not asking for more effort. He is offering rest. He said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And he doesn't lie. He doesn't demand that you rebuild yourself before going to him. He wants you exactly like this, broken, tired, without strength. Because that's where grace shines brightest. It is in this emotional desert that the source opens. It is in this dark night of the soul that light begins to dawn. Moses begged for death, but God offered relief. And with you, it will be no different. Even when everything seems too heavy, remember, you are not alone in this. What's more, you weren't created to carry the world on your shoulders. You were created to place this burden on Jesus because he cares, he holds it, he sustains. If this message spoke to you in a way that no one else understands, write in the comments, "Jesus, ease my heart." It could be just that. But sometimes the simple act of writing a prayer is the beginning of healing. Someone will read it, identify with it, and feel like they are not alone. Your comment may touch a life as tired as yours. And here comes the most touching part. Sometimes liberation comes not when you try to be stronger, but when you accept being loved even when you are weak. Get ready. What you're about to discover will change the way you see everything. Jeremiah carried a pain that he found no room to escape. It wasn't just sadness, it was something deeper, an invisible weight, an accumulation of unexpressed feelings, emotions that burned inside him like fire, but that he tried, at all costs, to silence. In Jeremiah 29, he says, "The fire burned in my heart. It was like fire shut up in my bones." He tried to silence his own voice, suppress the cry that grew within, suffocate what the Spirit screamed in his chest. But there was a breaking point. The lump in his throat couldn't take it any longer. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe you've reached your breaking point too. How many times have you swallowed crying in front of others? How many times has your throat caught when you just want to say, "I'm not okay"? That knot you feel, it's not just a physical symptom. It carries stories, fears, traumas, memories that you tried to forget, but that keep squeezing you inside. And just like Jeremiah, you may have tried to silence your own pain, rationalize what you feel, put a smile on your face while your chest suffocates inside. But Jesus speaks to you now, and he says, you don't have to hide it anymore. There is something liberating about letting out what burns inside. Jeremiah thought that remaining silent would be safer. But the more he was silent, the more his soul screamed. Does this sound like you? Because there are pains that we cannot put into words. But Jesus understands even what was never said. God knows the tears you haven't cried yet. He hears the screams that never left his mouth. And he doesn't judge you for feeling so much. He invites you to surrender all of this. Everything, really. Even what you think is too small to take to him. You know that moment when you lie down and feel like if you say just one word you'll collapse? That moment when your chest is so tight that you lack air, lack faith, lack ground. It is at this exact point that God most wants to meet you. Not on the stage of strength, but behind the scenes of fragility. Jeremiah was a prophet, a man of God, and yet he experienced an intense emotional battle. So no, you are not weak for being like this. You are human. But there is a God who is divine and does not turn away from your pain. On the contrary, he enters it with you. The lump in your throat may have been there for days, weeks, years, but today Jesus invites you to release, allowing the fire within you to find direction, not destruction. May what you feel turn into prayer. Let the pain become an outcry. May anguish be exchanged for comfort. Jesus doesn't want you to live repressed. He wants you to live free, and liberation begins with a simple but profound gesture, talking to him, telling everything, even if in tears, even if without words, even if it's just a whisper between sobs. If you have this knot that no one sees, write in the comments, "Jesus, hear what my heart can't say." This isn't just a comment, it's an act of faith, a cry from the soul, and believe me, all of heaven listens when your heart speaks, and someone who reads what you wrote might find the courage to open up too. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed, because there are moments when silence explodes into revelation, and what's to come will touch where no human words have ever reached. Martha was standing, but inside she had already collapsed. His brother Lazarus had died, and with him, the last remaining spark of hope seemed to have gone. The house was full, but she felt empty. Everyone was talking, but nothing made sense. Grief had dimmed the shine in her eyes. It wasn't just grief over loss, it was frustration with God. And it was in this state that she said the phrase that carries more than just an outburst. It carries an emotional weight that many are familiar with. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." John 11:21. A phrase that translates not only longing, but that paralyzing feeling of abandonment, as if God had arrived late, as if he had missed the moment to act. How many times have you felt this? The feeling that you prayed, waited, believed, and yet the worst happened. That pain that makes you look at the sky and ask silently, "Why now? Why not sooner?" And over time, the look loses color. The days pass, but it seems like it's always the same night. And no matter how much you try to hide it, something inside you died with that dream that didn't come true, with that loss that seemed impossible to bear, with that love that left without warning. And even surrounded by people, you feel invisible, like Martha. But what Martha didn't know was that Jesus was already on his way. He knew the pain, he saw the tears, and even when everyone thought it was too late, he came forward with an answer that no one expected. Because Jesus' time is not measured in clocks, but in revelations. And when he arrives, even if it seems out of time, he transforms grief into a miracle. He doesn't just console, he resurrects. He not only wipes away the tears, he changes the reason for them. Martha thought it was the end, but it was just the beginning of something much bigger. If you have lost the sparkle in your eyes, Jesus speaks to you now. He's not late, he arrives with purpose, and maybe all you need is not to understand the reason for the suffering, but to accept who is waiting for you on the other side of it. Jesus does not turn away from your pain, he approaches. He asks where you put it, not the dead body of your miracle, but the faith you buried with it. And he is ready to say, "Take away the stone," because what you buried in sadness, he will call to life in joy. This story is not just here to move. She is an invitation, a call to hope that you no longer believed you could feel again. And if, as you listen to this, you feel that your eyes no longer shine as they used to, then know Jesus is before you now, not to charge you, but to lift you up. He sees your tired heart. He sees your apathy disguised as routine. He sees their empty smiles, but he also sees what can still blossom in you. If this message spoke to your heart, comment, "Jesus, rekindle the light within me." Don't let this statement die in thought. Write, make public what you are determined to. Live a fresh start with God, a reunion with true joy, a new chance for the shine to return to your eyes. And here comes the most amazing part of this story. Because what Jesus did for Martha, he is about to do for you. Don't miss what will be revealed next. The moment when the crying will be stopped by a miracle is closer than you think. Rejection, one of the quietest and most cutting pains that the human soul can experience. It's not like a scream, it's more like a cold whisper that lodges itself deep in your chest and says, "You're not important." The pain of being ignored, even by those you love, doesn't show up in photos. It doesn't show itself on social media, but it corrodes slowly. And Jose knew well what that was. sold by his own brothers, betrayed by those who were supposed to protect him, forgotten in an Egyptian prison, wronged for years. Every silence, every closed door, every unexplained absence, they were more than events. They were proof for him that no one cared. But there was someone who saw everything. The most striking thing is that God did not prevent Joseph's rejection. He allowed it, and perhaps that's the hardest part to understand, that today's abandonment, however unfair and cruel it may seem, is pushing you towards something greater than your heart can conceive right now. Because what rejected you directed you. The arms that closed for you made way for the arms that will never close. Joseph had no idea that the pit where he was thrown would be the beginning of the path to the throne, that the prison where he was forgotten would be the corridor that would take him to govern a nation, that the wounds he carried in his heart would be the key to saving the very family that hurt him. Do you feel rejected, forgotten? The world may have written you off, but Jesus speaks to you now, and he says to you, you are not forgotten. You are on the move. What you experience today is not the end, it is preparation. The pain of rejection is the birthplace of a mission. When Joseph meets his brothers again and could use their power to take revenge, he says, you intended evil against me, but God turned it for good. Genesis 50:20. This is not just a phrase about overcoming, it's a revelation. It's as if he said, you had to leave me for God to find me. And maybe that's what you need to hear. God didn't abandon you when everyone left you. It was exactly there that he began to lead you. Don't underestimate the deserts of life. Many miracles are born precisely in places where no one wants to be. The looks that ignored you, the silences that hurt you, the hugs that never arrived, all of this was noted by God, and not to victimize you, but to position you. You were not created to beg for attention, but to reflect the love of the one who will never ignore you. Jesus is calling you to stop trying to prove yourself to those who didn't know how to see you, and start living for the one who saw you from the womb. If this message is touching your heart, say in the comments, Jesus, transform my pain into purpose. Your comment could be the breath of life that someone who feels invisible needs to read today. Become a channel of the same healing you seek, but that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. What happens when the pain that knocked you down becomes the reason you get up? The answer to this may change the way you look at every tear that has ever fallen. Sometimes the heart weighs so much that even words disappear. There are days when the simple act of trying to pray seems like a superhuman effort. You kneel, open your lips, but the sound doesn't come. It is not spiritual laziness, it's pain, it's exhaustion. It is the silence of a soul that has already screamed too much inside. And when tiredness is not just physical, but emotional and spiritual, the feeling is that not even God is listening, or worse, that he is not even there anymore. But Jesus speaks to you now, and he understands you more than you know. He went through exactly this at the darkest moment of his life. In Gethsemane, that night before the cross, Jesus called his closest friends and asked one simple thing, watch with me. But while he sweated drops of blood in agony, they slept. They slept when he needed them most. They slept while he poured out his heart to the Father. They slept when he felt most alone. Jesus' heart was so heavy, so oppressed, that the words that came out of his mouth were, my soul is deeply saddened, even to the point of death. And yet, he continued praying, even without visible answers, even alone, even betrayed by the sleep of those who loved him. Doesn't that sound familiar? How many times have you wanted to pray, but were overcome by the weight of pain? How many times has your mind been so confused, so full of anguish, that you couldn't utter anything? Spiritual blockage is not always a lack of faith. Sometimes it is the result of a soul that has been hurt too much, that no longer knows how to ask for help. But here is the truth that will set your heart free. Jesus does not require you to know how to pray well. He just wants you to be with him, even in silence, even without strength. even just sitting next to him, like a son who no longer knows what to say, but who knows where he needs to be. The presence of Jesus does not depend on his words. It manifests itself in your simple desire to be with him. In Gethsemane, he returned to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he asked, "Couldn't you watch with me for even 1 hour?" This was not a cold rebuke, it was a lament of love. It was the heart of someone who just wanted company, and that's what he wants from you today. May you be with him, even if it is in silence, even if it's crying, even if you can't even open your mouth. Religiosity will tell you that praying is a duty, but Jesus is showing you that sometimes praying is simply existing in his presence. Breathe close to him, feeling that he will not abandon you, even if you cannot utter a single word. That's relationship, that's grace. This is the love that sustains you even when everything inside you screams to give up. If this message spoke to your heart, comment, "Jesus, stay with me even in my silence." Sometimes your comment can be the prayer that another afflicted heart cannot say. You become a bridge of faith for someone who is also stuck inside. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. Jesus did not leave Gethsemane without an answer. He was not spared from pain, but he was strengthened to face it. That's what he will do for you too. Don't wait for a perfect prayer. Just be with him. It is in his presence that the weight of the heart begins to be relieved. At that moment when the rooster crowed, Pedro felt something that perhaps you have already felt, the deep, overwhelming regret that seems to break something inside. It wasn't just guilt, it was a sadness that came from the awareness of having denied the one who loved him most 3 times, in front of everyone, when Jesus needed him most. Jesus and Peter's eyes met at that moment, and Peter couldn't stand it. He went out and cried bitterly. This is a pain that no one can minimize, the weight of feeling like you have failed God, a failure that seems irreparable, a mistake that echoes in the mind day and night, an inner silence that screams, "Is there still forgiveness for me?" Jesus speaks to you now, and he speaks to those who feel they have failed too much to be restored. Maybe you walked away. Maybe he made promises he didn't keep. Maybe he promised that he would change, that he would resist, that he wouldn't fall again. And he did. And now all that's left is a feeling of frustration, of shame, of distance. You wonder if God still hears you, if he still believes in you. And the answer is at that moment between Jesus and Peter. Yes, he listens, he believes, he restores. The verse says, "And going out from there, he wept bitterly." Luke 22:62. And that crying wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new beginning, because when Jesus was resurrected, he went to meet Peter, not with words of condemnation, but with healing questions. "Do you love me?" 3 times. 1 for each denial, 1 for each pain, 1 for each tear, because Jesus doesn't reject you for making mistakes. He restores those who repent. Peter was restored, he was forgiven, and it was sent. The same man who cried bitterly became one of the greatest leaders in the history of the Christian faith. Doesn't that show you something powerful? The mistake you made may have hurt, but it does not nullify the plan that God has for your life. The grace of Jesus is greater than your stumble. He's not waiting for you to come back perfect. He just wants you to come back. And when you return, you will discover that he was already waiting for you, that he still calls you by name, that he still believes in you, that he still has plans for you, that he still wants to use your story, including the most painful chapters, to heal other people. If this message spoke to your heart, write in the comments, "Jesus restores me." Your testimony, even though it is still in process, could be the breath of hope that someone needs right now, and more. If this message touched your heart, click the like button and subscribe to the channel, not just for yourself, but so that others can also be reached by this word. Your simple gesture can be a bridge between heaven and the heart of someone who is thinking about giving up. And here comes something even more transformative. The failure you fear most could be exactly the ground where God will build the greatest victory of your life. The prison was dark, the floor cold, the musty smell mixed with the dried blood on the clothes was suffocating. Paul and Silas's backs were bleeding from the lashes, and the chains were heavy on their feet. They had done what was right. They preached the truth. They healed a young girl. They freed a soul. But there they were, thrown like criminals in a dark cell. Anyone in that situation would have cried, given up, silenced. But something supernatural happened that night. Instead of murmurs, praise was heard. Instead of despair, prayer was heard. Around midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang hymns to God, and the other prisoners listened to them. They were bleeding, but they loved it. They were trapped, but they were exalted. They were in the worst moment, and yet they found the strength to glorify. And here is something that breaks all human logic. When everything around us falls apart, what we do with our voice reveals what is in our spirit. Some are silent, others curse. But those who know Jesus praise him, because they know pain is not the end. Prison is not the end. Midnight is not the end. Listen to me carefully. Jesus speaks to you now. Maybe you are living your own midnight. Maybe everything is falling apart. Disorganized emotions, broken family, piled up debts, buried dreams. And you ask, Lord, where are you? The answer is in the next beat of your heart. He's with you. Midnight is the darkest point before dawn. And it was at that moment that the supernatural manifested itself in the prison. Suddenly, an earthquake shook the foundations. The doors opened. The chains came loose. Not because they asked for deliverance, but because they praised in the midst of pain. God cannot resist a heart that worships him even when it is wounded. This story shows you something that the world doesn't understand. Praise is not denial of pain. It is spiritual resistance. It's declaring, still I trust, still I believe, still I worship you. Have you ever experienced this kind of praise? Have you ever dared to love when everything said it was time to give up? Have you ever shouted glory to God with your soul in pieces? If not yet, perhaps now is the time. Your earthquake may not open iron doors, but it can free your mind. It can uproot anxiety, crush fear, renew hope. When you open your mouth to praise in pain, the sky moves toward you. If this word awakened something in you, write in the comments, even in pain, I will praise, because your statement can empower someone who is about to fall silent. And remember, Jesus speaks to you, and he hears you, even when the sound that comes out is just a whisper between tears. And do you know the most impactful thing about all this? That night did not end in despair. It ended with salvation. The jailer who saw everything knelt down and asked, "What must I do to be saved?" The pain of Paulo and Silas turned into a door to salvation for someone. This shows you something that few understand. Sometimes God allows you to go through something not because he wants to destroy you, but because he will use your pain as a seed for other people's liberation. Your praise in pain has power, it has purpose, it has destiny. So don't be silent. Midnight has arrived, but that doesn't mean the end. It means the miracle is close. And here comes something that will change the way you see your difficult days. The prison that seemed to be the end point was the setting where God wrote a new beginning. If you've come this far, it's because something inside you moved. Maybe it was a tightness in your chest that you had been carrying for days, weeks, maybe even years. Maybe it was a painful memory, a feeling of failure, rejection, abandonment that you never knew how to deal with. Or who knows, it was that silent void that no one sees but that swallows you inside. I know, and more important than me knowing, Jesus knows. Jesus speaks to you in every unspoken pain, in every hidden tear, in every thought you had when you thought you couldn't take it anymore. He was there, not as a distant judge, but as a loving father whispering, "Son, daughter, I am with you. I have never left your side, Today you heard stories of men and women who went through deep pain as real as yours, but he also saw that in every tragedy there was a possibility of a miracle. In every silence, a seed of hope. In every dark night, a promise of dawn. And now the time has come to seal this with faith, with delivery, with prayer. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this presence. It is not an invention. She is real. You are not alone in this battle. And your pain, as overwhelming as it may seem, is about to be turned into testimony. So, if you can, place your hand over your heart and repeat this prayer with all your soul. Lord Jesus, I have come this far because my heart screams for relief. I recognize that I tried to carry everything alone. I hid my pain, I swallowed my tears, I was silent before the world. But now I give you everything. My tiredness, my wounds, my guilt, my emptiness. Lord, heal me, restore me, fill me with your joy. May every emotional chain that imprisons me be broken now, in your name. I accept you as my Savior, my friend, my refuge, and even though it still hurts, I choose to trust, I choose to praise, because I know that midnight may have arrived, but your miracle is already on the way. If you have prayed sincerely, know something has already begun to change within you. Maybe you don't see it yet, but the sky is already moving. If you've come this far, it's because God is working in your life. And he didn't start something to leave it half done. Now I have a powerful invitation for you. The video that is appearing on your screen now is the continuation of what God started here, and what you will discover in this next video could be exactly what was needed for your complete liberation. Do not ignore this call. Don't skip this chance. If this message spoke to you, what you will discover in the video that is on screen now could change your life even more. Don't leave without watching, because what comes next could be what's needed for your release. Leave in the comments, I made it to the end. This isn't just a comment, it's a spiritual cry saying, I endured, I remained, and I believe God is lifting me up. Share this video with someone you love. You can be the instrument of salvation that God wants to use today. And if this message touched your heart, subscribe to the channel now, because here it's not just content, it's a mission, it's a refuge, it is a voice from God to your soul. When you sign up, you're saying, I want to keep hearing Jesus speak to me. I want to stay on this journey. But those who hope in the Lord renew their strength. They mount up with wings like eagles. They run and are not tired. They walk and are not weary. Isaiah 40:31, Jesus speaks to you, and he's not finished yet. Click on the video now, because the next step in your healing starts there.